The costumes, the hair. There's only one ABBA. And after decades of going their own way, the Swedish
Benny Andersson wrote ABBA's biggest hits, while secretly battling something darker. For 20 years, he kept quiet. Then in 2011, at age 64, he finally admitted the truth. He couldn't function without alcohol during ABBA's golden years. Every hit song, every world tour, every Grammy, he was drunk through it all. But that wasn't even the hardest confession. He also revealed why songs like The Winner Takes It All hurt so much. They weren't just about heartbreak. They were his way of avoiding real conversations. Benny Andersson was born on December 16, 1946, in the Västkusten district of Stockholm. But this wasn't just any birth. He was stepping into a family where music flowed through every room like air. His father Gösta may have been a civil engineer by job, but at heart he was a musician, especially when it came to playing the accordion. Even more important was Benny's grandfather, Ephraim, who filled family events with Swedish folk melodies on his accordion. At home, music wasn't background noise. It was the main event. Benny grew up hearing tunes that had been passed down through generations. That deep connection to Swedish folk music would later find its way into global pop hits. Though no one knew it yet, not even Benny. Everything changed when Benny turned 6. That's when he got his first accordion. For most kids, it might have ended up in a corner after a few days. But not for Benny. He was obsessed. He joined his father and grandfather, playing folk tunes night after night. It wasn't just fun. It was training. He learned how music tells a story. How melodies speak without words. Waltzes, kadishes, polskas, they became part of his musical DNA. Years later, those same rhythms would echo in ABBA songs that filled arenas. But at that point, he was just a boy learning how to make music with the people he loved. By the time he was 10, Benny was ready to move beyond the accordion. He discovered the piano, and it felt like home. There were no teachers, no lessons, just him, the keys, and hours of trial and error. He played by ear, figuring out notes from the radio, then twisting them into his own versions. He didn't follow rules, he invented his own. Day after day, he sat at the piano for hours. Slowly, he built a style that blended pop with folk, structure with soul. It wasn't long before he could shift between musical worlds like it was nothing. That blend would become one of ABBA's secret weapons. Songs like Dancing Queen owe their signature sound to those lonely hours Benny spent figuring things out by himself. At 15, while most kids were still trying to pass maths tests, Benny walked away from school. It was 1961. And he had made up his mind. Music wasn't just a dream. It was the only path. He started performing at youth clubs around Stockholm, especially in the suburb. He wasn't famous yet, but people noticed the way he played, the way he held a crowd. It was clear he wasn't just another teen with a guitar. He gained a reputation fast, and soon his name was floating around among local bands and producers. It was risky. Sweden back then didn't look kindly on dropouts. But Benny wasn't interested in safety. He was chasing something bigger. And it was working. Around this time, Benny also experienced something that would shape him just as deeply as music. Young love and fatherhood. He met Christina Grunwald, a fellow musician. They connected quickly, and by the time Benny was 17, they had a son, Peter. 2 years later, their daughter Helen was born. Benny was still just a teenager. Most kids his age were barely figuring out their future. And here he was trying to balance diapers and rehearsals. It wasn't easy. He had gigs, dreams, and now a family depending on him. But those years taught him something no stage ever could. What it meant to carry real responsibility. And those emotions, the struggle, the love, the guilt, they would one day seep into lyrics that made millions cry. Benny Andersson was just 17 when everything changed. 1964. He wasn't a star yet. He was still working as a bank clerk by day, but at night he played music. That's when he caught the attention of Svina Hedlund, the lead singer of the Hep Stars. During a casual jam session, Benny's skill on the organ stunned him. Days later, Benny was officially part of the HEP Stars. The band already had momentum, but Benny added something extra. His classical training mixed with raw instinct gave the group a new sound. He brought complexity without losing the beat. Within months, the band took off and Benny was at the center of it all. Their real breakthrough came in March 1965. That's when they performed Cadillac on national television. The show was called Drop In, and over 1 million Swedes watched it. Huge numbers for a country of just 7.7 million. The energy, the confidence, and especially Benny's electric organ playing left viewers stunned. The band was suddenly everywhere. People called them the Swedish Beatles. Benny, the once quiet teen, was now a teen idol. Girls screamed his name. Photographers chased him. Cadillac sold more than 80,000 copies, a huge number back then, especially in a market ruled by British and American bands. But Benny didn't just want to perform, he wanted to create. Later that same year, he wrote his first original song, No Response. It didn't top the charts, but it was a start. Then in 1966, he wrote Sunny Girl. That changed everything. It wasn't just a hit, it was a breakthrough. The song had a delicate sadness to it. Something uniquely Swedish. It hit #1 and stayed there for weeks. Benny had no formal songwriting education. He did it all by ear. Yet, Sunny Girl sold more than 50,000 copies and got covered across Europe. Swedish pop, long seen as second tier, suddenly had global potential, and Benny was leading the way. Between 1964 and 1969, the HEP Stars dominated Swedish pop, and Benny wrote many of their biggest hits. Songs like Wedding, Consolation, She Will Love You, and It's Nice to Be Back didn't just sell well. They became part of Swedish culture. Wedding, released in 1966, stood out with its rich arrangement and emotion. Consolation and She Will Love You were both top 5 hits. It's Nice to Be Back was a live show favorite. While most Swedish bands copied British or American styles. Benny created something original. By 1967, the HEP stars had sold over 400,000 records. In Sweden, that was almost unheard of. And Benny's songwriting was at the core of it all. On June 5, 1966, Benny Andersson was on tour with his band, the HEP Stars. At the same time, Jern Ulvaeus, also 18, was touring with the Hootenanny Singers. That afternoon, their paths crossed in a park called Slots Parken in Linköping. They sat on a bench, guitars in hand, and began playing Beatles songs together. What started as a simple jam session would end up changing pop music forever. That moment sparked a creative partnership that would lead to ABBA. Over 400 million records sold and one of the most successful songwriting duos in history. That park bench still exists and today it plays ABBA songs when you sit on it. As Bjorn once said, my life had become completely different if we had not met here. Soon after that meeting, the two started writing songs together. Their first collaboration was a track called Isn't It Easy to Say. It wasn't a global hit, but it meant everything to them. It was recorded by the HEP Stars and appeared on an album that reached number 12 on the Swedish charts. That song proved they had something special. They didn't stop there. By the end of the 1960s, they were writing for other artists, perfecting their craft, and building the sound that would one day take over the world. But they weren't just thinking about music. They were thinking about business, too. Together with Stig Andersson, who would later become ABBA's manager, they launched Union Songs, a publishing company that gave them full control of their music rights. That move was rare for musicians at the time. It meant that when the big money started rolling in, they didn't have to share it with outside companies. They owned their songs. That decision would make them millions in the decades that followed and protect their legacy. Then came 1969. Benny had entered the Mello Festival and contest with a song called Hedge Clown. It came in second place after a tense vote. But something more important happened that night. Backstage, Benny met a young singer named Annie Fried Lingad. Within weeks, they were dating. Their romance quickly turned into a musical bond. She wasn't just his girlfriend. She would become one of ABBA's voices. That meeting helped complete the group that would change everything. In 1970, Benny and Bjorn released an album called Lycka, meaning happiness. On one of the tracks, Hedge Gamlan, they brought in their girlfriends, Annie Fred and Agnia Feldskog, to sing backup vocals. That track was the first time all four future ABBA members appeared on a song together. It became a hit in Sweden, reaching number 5 on the charts and staying at the top of the radio rankings for 5 straight weeks. It wasn't just a song. It was the birth of something massive. A year later, in 1971, Stig Andersson gave Benny and Bjorn another opportunity. He hired them as staff producers at Polar Music. That job gave them everything they needed: access to studios, freedom to experiment, and hands-on experience in arranging and recording. They weren't just songwriters now. They were becoming complete producers. They used this time to sharpen their skills and test new sounds. These experiments would later shape ABBA's signature style. Then came the night that changed their lives. April 6, 1974, Eurovision, Brighton, England. They performed Waterloo and lit up the stage with their outrageous costumes and energy. The song won by 6 points, becoming Sweden's first Eurovision victory. Waterloo sold nearly 6 million copies and even broke into the US and Australian markets. But here's the twist. Benny didn't actually see that performance live. He was there on stage, but said years later that he didn't watch the full footage until decades after. The moment had been such a blur, he hadn't fully taken it in. From that night onward, Benny and Bern were on a roll. Between 1972 and 1982, they wrote and produced every single ABBA song, all of them. From Mamma Mia to Dancing Queen to Fernando. Dancing Queen hit #1 in over a dozen countries and became their only US chart topper. Fernando sold over 6 million copies in 1976 alone. These weren't just pop hits, they were anthems heard across the globe. Benny's perfectionism was legendary. He would spend weeks refining songs until every note felt right. That's why the music still holds up today. What made ABBA's sound so special wasn't just the melodies. It was something deeper. Benny had grown up with Swedish folk music, and he never left that behind. He blended it with British pop, American rock, and even disco. The result was something new, catchy but emotional.